I'm in conversation with Vineet Bhatnagar, MD and CEO PhillipCapital. Vineet, let me start by first congratulating you. What an amazing panel.
Thank you.
You have US FDA coming down. It's like hearing everything from the horse's mouth.
Yes.
But first, I want to start by asking you, how important is the pharmaceutical sector to you from the investor's perspective?
I think it's very important because, the Indian generic segment is the third largest in the world, and the largest exporter nation as far as India is concerned is US. About 40% of the exports that happen from India go to the US, and therefore to remain compliant in the eyes of US FDA is important. Look at it another way. Outside of the US, the largest US FDA approved sites are in India, about 500 of them. In 2015, about 14 of them received, an observation list from US FDA inspectors. That number climbed up to 25 in 2016. So there is a growing concern whether there is something that we are not getting right as far as the manufacturing sites in India are concerned. And therefore, we thought that rather than talking about the general growth and the product range of the Indian pharmaceutical industry, we should look at the regulatory and the compliance issues. And we have had a very good response this morning.
Yeah, in fact, that was actually the second question that I was going to ask you, which was on, usually when you see pharmaceutical conferences being organized, you have the top management of key pharmaceutical manufacturing companies.
Yes.
But your panel today unusually focuses only on regulators.
Yes. It was very deliberate. One, we did not want to commingle the Indian pharmaceutical manufacturers along with the regulators, because it could get defensive, it could get uncomfortable, and that was not the idea. I think the idea was that we bring out to our investor clients the sets of issues that have been troubling the US FDA inspectors, if at all. What are the steps that the Indian companies have taken over the last couple of years, and to drive home the point that the cost of compliance is always less than cost of actually rectifying errors. So that is the main objective.
And since you mentioned the Indian government, what are the key steps you think that the Indian government can take, A, towards changing this regulatory hurdles that we are facing, and B, for the overall performance of the sector?
Okay, so all the pharmaceutical companies in India are private enterprises, and therefore from that point of view, it is commercially sensible for the Indian private sector to understand what is it that is going to be troubling or impacting their businesses. And therefore it is not so much about the Indian government, but it is about the Indian private corporate sector. However, I must also add that the India FDA and the India Pharmaceutical Association in the last 4 years have also done their bit in terms of imposing certain certification on all the manpower and personnel who work on the shop floor of all these pharmaceutical plants. They're also insisting and guiding people to follow a set of training programs and continuous improvement in the quality. So there is that much that the India FDA as well as the India Pharmaceutical Association has also started doing, which will only improve the practices and the quality culture within these Indian companies.
You mentioned 40% of our exports go to the US markets. So they are definitely one of our biggest markets.
Absolutely.
Any small deviation in policy, any change affects us severely, and especially on the performance of the companies on the stock market.
Yes.
With our own influx of technology and the Indian consumer market growing in itself, do you see this scenario changing 10 years from now, or are we still going to be driven by US FDA?
No, I think the domestic market itself is about half of the total the half of the total market size that the Indian pharmaceutical industry does. So out of $30 billion, $15 billion is domestic. And of the balance $15 billion, which is exports, US is 40%. So that's only $6 billion. So clearly the biggest piece as far as the market is concerned is India itself. I think what is important is that if there is an improvement in the continuous quality processes amongst the Indian pharmaceutical companies, then there is no reason to believe that that most of the formulations and most of the pharmaceutical products could be manufactured here mainly for domestic consumption, but also additionally to developed markets like US and Europe.
So from today's conference, and this is the last thing that I want to ask you, what are the key insights that we can take from whatever everybody has brought out in terms of concerns and in terms of the strengths of the Indian pharmaceutical sector?
I think one of the things that I heard, from a US FDA consultant was that over the next 5 to 7 years, the level of quality improvements that he anticipates in Indian pharmaceutical companies are going to be way ahead of even the US domestic pharmaceutical companies. That was very encouraging. He believes that the new generation of pharmaceutical leaders that are coming into this business are so conscious of automation, processes, continued training, and that motivational factor that is so important as a personal business leader that he pointed out. So that is very encouraging. He also pointed out that a lot of these issues can be traced down to our culture towards quality and our culture toward compliance, which is set to change dramatically, because we are seeing the same thing in almost all industries. Financial services, tightly regulated. Telecommunication, adhere to it. Banking, there is a set of regulatory environment that you have to perform under. Likewise for pharmaceuticals. So when and as quickly as possible, the Indian private sector and corporate sector embraces quality as a part and compliance as a part of doing business, they will recognize that being compliant is cheaper and a better way of doing business than just reacting to firefighting situations.
So for our investors, stay invested.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.